Going into this match after getting reverse swept, it feels pretty bad because we could have just ended on a really good note after 3-0ing Team Liquid, the favorites going into this tournament. But we're really confident because we beat GCU. We had a really close game with Team Liquid, and yesterday, or the day before that, Team Liquid had a really solid victory over E United.
Like Young mentions, Team Liquid had a solid victory over E United. They've got themselves the victory in game number 1 there. So welcome back to game number 2 here as P1 takes on E United. They're already out to an early lead in this series after, well, basically team fighting their way through E United's late game comp to brute force game 1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how confident you can really be with a win like that. It was one where it felt like United had a really strong game plan heading into the game. They executed it fairly well in the early game. They started getting a little antsy, making mistakes, and then Phoenix One do a great job capitalizing on them. And eventually they have complete control of the game where they're up, 6,000 gold. They've taken an inhibitor. It's going great. And then they make their own mistake. And United suddenly back into the game. And it is a very back and forth first match there. And it's something that I think adaptation will be very, very important because I don't think Phoenix One is going to be happy about exactly how that draft went down. It basically came down to, like Jat said, that Maokai pick and how much it's able to offer in the late game and how reliable its engage is in being able to find critical members. So that was a huge thing. And now that E United's on blue side, you can't guarantee get it. So we're going to have to see how Phoenix One wants to react.
Yeah, I mean, E United themselves had some very interesting kind of draft strategies when they were on the red side, and then when they went to blue side, basically had their priority picks, and that's pretty much what they were wanting to do. Their draft strategy for that game 1 was basically heavily targeted at Ryu, but now they're on the blue side, they can potentially change it up and just potentially get, the Thresh was very highly contested in game number 1. It was first picked there by Phoenix One, even though the Tristana was available. We'll see if that wound up changing priority now.
You also saw some tricky things with that Thresh pick, but it overall did not feel as influential as some of the other picks in that game. The Cassiopeia for GBM actually looked pretty good, and I wouldn't mind seeing United mostly return to the same game plan with a little bit more focus on scaling into that late game and going for smaller leads. When they got that pick off on Ryu in the mid game, don't go for the Baron, go for the mid turret that you don't have yet. Those kinds of decisions, if they clean up a little bit, feels like a great game for them. And right away, you see them copying their bans so far already with the Elise and the Corki. We'll have to see if they end up throwing a Kalista ban in here as Phoenix One has banned out the Caitlyn.
We actually have seen them in the games yesterday against Goldcoin United leave the Kalista open, and they will wind up banning the Thresh away. So now it's on P1. Do they ban the Kalista and then basically give the Tristana back over to United for the second game in a row? Or do they ban something completely different and make them choose which one they want?
Well, the difficult part as well is that Maokai pick. How important is that for your team comp on E United here? Because Phoenix One, if they ban away the Kalista, you'll have to choose between going for that the Tristana or the Maokai. They actually go with a Jarvan ban, leaving a lot of things up. This is actually really interesting because now there's 2 80 carries in the Maokai. E United go for the Kalista. Phoenix One can grab the Tristana and the Maokai now.
That's actually very interesting considering it was E United that showed that they didn't have the Kalista priority yesterday against Goldcoin United. Instead, they're the ones that take it this time, and immediately now Phoenix One say, hey, the Tristana's fallen into our laps. We're going to take that one up. More importantly, Arrow has been dominating a lot of the bottom lanes in this promotion tournament in general, and the fact that the Tristana matches up well into Kalista during the lane phase might just be something that P1 wants to utilize.
Very support reliant as well, though, so we'll have to see how the rest of the bot lane shakes out. Arrow, to be fair, is not a Tristana player in the sense where he highly prioritizes it. He wants it all the time. He plays really aggressive with his jump, and he's mostly known more as a caster AD carry. Really likes things like that Varus, like the Jhin, being able to throw in his utility as well as his damage. And Tristana, basically completely auto attack reliant and completely damage focused.
We see now that E United steals away the Gnar, and they also grab the Gragas pickup. So Dandy's going to be on another tanky jungler, this time around the Gragas, instead of, because the Rek'Sai was picked up here by Phoenix One. But they take the Gnar away from Ziggs. They get rid of one of the more impactful kind of split-pushing champions that Ziggs has in his champion pool, but they do wind up securing a mid laner for Ryu on the side of Phoenix One. They snatch away the Taliyah, because last time around, they banned the LeBlanc, they banned the Taliyah, they banned the Corki, and he had to play Syndra, and the Cassiopeia was taken away.
And to be fair, I think Ryu performed admirably on a champion after receiving so much attention, but he was clearly not quite himself. Fell prone to a lot more stuff in the early and mid-game portions, and then in the late game still found those critical team fights, but not probably his best performance this tournament, so they want to get him on something a little more comfortable. And no surprise, you see E United with their Gnar locked in, focusing their bans down on that top side.
You see there's another mid lane ban that comes out from Phoenix One if they're trying to hamper down on GBM's champion pool. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Orianna ban, as that is something that GBN had kind of made a name for himself on. It was banned away in game 1, but instead they banned away the LeBlanc, so something that can more influence onto the sides of Summoner's Rift, as in take it out of the champion pool. Like we said, focusing on the top side of the map, actually focusing down on the support pickup as well, because Special hasn't necessarily picked up his support champion yet. They banned the Lulu away, so getting rid of that Lulu Tristana synergy too, which is kind of left open, which is kind of important.
Little surprised to see it go that way, just with the fact that Maokai's up and all these other champions. No Maokai this game. Lulu banned away from the Tristana. Makes some sense to make sure they don't get that on-hit synergy that comes with the Tristana's super high attack speed. The Shen going over this time, so flip side of the matchup, people playing the thing that they played against in the previous game, so we'll have to see if Licorice or Zig outperform each other.
Ooh.
And oh boy, this is a dive comp, Tom.
This is a very beefy team composition. So you have the Galio, the Alistar, the Gragas, and even the Gnar that can really just hop into the fray and just immediately jump onto a backline. Then you have the Kalista, who, well, it hops in general because of the Martial Pose passive, but also not very high damage output team composition overall from E United. They just kind of want to prolong fights.
They want to end the game right away. So Kalista is going to be power spiking at level 6. Alistar much the same way. You get the Galio ultimate as well, and you just have a giant 5-man bot lane party.
And in the meantime, the Braum is the last pick overall for Phoenix One. Nothing too special coming out from X Special, as that's one of his kind of tried and true support champions on the bottom side of the map. It also meets up for a decent front line from the side of Phoenix One as well. So now we have Shen, Rek'Sai, Braum, going to be brung with a Galio, a Gragas, an Alistar. You have Gnar and Kalista matching up against Taliyah and the Tristana from the opposite side of Phoenix One. So very interesting kind of team composition overall. Something completely different from E United in the fact that they don't have two kind of late game scaling carries, but also Phoenix One now has a little bit more mobility out of their mid lane from Ryu, and they have that opportunity to go for that 1-3-1 setup with the Shen and the Taliyah in the later stages of the game.
Yeah, very different team comps from both sides. Last game, P1 was more focused on a pick style team comp. E United were in the front to back team fighting style. Now they want to be diving backlines and instantly blowing up that Tristana if possible. Huge chain CC potential for that 4-tank team comp on E United. Meanwhile, Phoenix One, they have a little bit of the global advantage, though it's not too significant because Galio can match up decently with Taliyah, and then Shen is the small advantage, but he's going to be getting pushed in pretty frequently by the Gnar. And it's just going to come down to really how well E United can pull off big plays in the early game, most likely.
And we'll also see how they play around Licorice on the Gnar pick. You mentioned the fact that the Gnar in the early stages of this game number 2 is going to have advantages over the Shen. If you want it getting out to an early lead, you can potentially just push the Shen back and eliminate one of the split push threats from P1 entirely. And if E United have had one thing they've been able to fall back on throughout this Challenger Series split, it has been the fact that Licorice and his teleport play, his split push play, has been pretty darn good.
I would say that's one of the things that really helped them win their series yesterday versus GCU. Solo did a good job matching up to him in the 1v1, but there were larger diversity in the playstyle that was coming out when he had the Camille. Sure, he got killed a bunch of times, but he kept up the pressure every single time. And so Licorice was able to set his team up on the map very well, despite his lack of individual kills. This time around, on the Gnar, a little bit larger of a individual influence champion than the Shen pick, because he was really late to a lot of the fights. There are a lot of times someone would get CC'd, he would try and ult in on that person, wasn't going in on them right away, and as a result, someone would get blown up and he would never find a way into that team fight.
We'll have to see. You mentioned the fact that the team composition from E United, just kind of hard. I'm kind of going through things I remember Kobe was talking about with the split push capabilities on the analyst desk yesterday. The fact that you have the ability to play around the split push, but a lot of the teams so far in the promotion tournament have kind of taken their time with it when it really should be viewed as more of a bit of a timer. So the fact that United's team composition wants to win the game as quickly as possible before their damage gets outscaled kind of factors into the fact that they have the split push available to them as well. Actually, P1 going for a little bit of an aggressive invade, just getting some vision control down on Dandy to try to figure out where he starts. And Dandy, interestingly enough, well, he's starting on the blue buff now because he does have the double leash, but he also interestingly has a Fervor Keystone on his Gragas. So we'll see if that's new meta or not, but Arrow and Special trying to harass them off the blue buff, potentially making Dandy try to utilize the smite here as well, so that he can't have that for later, and he will smite secure that.
I'm going to guess that Fervor is a carryover from the Rek'Sai game that he played previously.
Probably.
Of all things, that would be the most likely to me. And like you're saying on the split push point, it's tricky because a lot of times you want to be very, very aggressive in the early game with that split push champion. You want to get them ahead. You want to get some advantages. So that way, when you get into the mid and late game, you have the opportunity to take it slower. And that champion has an inherent advantage in the 1v1. They can grind out their opponent, whether through having higher sustain or DPS. They'll eventually be able to start taking turrets on their own. The problem is if you don't have that lead, you're buying a lot of time for the other teams to make plays and force you out of that split push scenario. So Gnar versus Shen, we were talking about it last game, never really came into account. There was a lot more about those pickoffs around the Baron buff, and that's one of those situations that we're saying the split push may not matter. Gnar is nice in that regard, though, that he does not rely solely on split pushing. He can go mega and take a good team fight.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is you need to have a teleport flank or two if you are going to be trying to force the game into a bit of a faster paced play, especially when there's a Tristana on the opposite side now for Phoenix One. And when more importantly, it's on Arrow, who was a big factor into why Phoenix One was actually able to hang in there in the earlier stages of the game. He was winning his lane when it came to CS differential. The bottom side of the map, the plays around that side were heavily influenced by the Varus Chain of Corruption. You don't have the same utility out of this Tristana pickup, of course, but if he's able to still continue to dominate his 2v2 lane phase, that'll mean that the Tristana late game comes that much earlier for P1.
That is one of the upsides, but you do have to wonder, of course, about just how well he will perform when he's not on that Darius role, because last game, him and MikeYeung combined for a lot of really nice engagements and set themselves up to be able to actually win that game. You see here, Phoenix One giving an early blue buff over to Ryu. Rek'Sai champion that really does not benefit much at all from it, minus the fact that he gets some nice XP. So they give it to the Taliyah, a champion that can push in the Galio repeatedly and make these pre-6 roams a lot more efficiently than a Galio can. So Phoenix One trying to optimize their power spike before United's level 6 kind of dive team comp comes online. I like this idea a lot.
I also like the fact that this is potentially one of the first times we've seen MikeYeung, who, when he came into the NALCS as the jungler for Phoenix One, he was the one that was getting the super leashes on his Rek'Sai, getting the early jungle pathing and going in aggressively and invading upon the enemy jungler. And basically the catalyst for a lot of what P1 was playing around. So a lot of the resources were being devoted to MikeYeung, and a lot of the naysayers of Phoenix One and bringing him in the jungle role, we're saying, well, he's basically being babysat by the team. This time around, we're seeing him donate the resources over to Ryu, who is being babysat by the enemy team.
Yeah, and it was a little bit of a push and pull because you can get babysat in different ways. So you saw Phoenix One's bot lane super aggressive into E United, contesting that red buff start out of Dandy. That is still a form of babysitting in the sense that while you're not getting a super leash, you're denying the enemy team fast jungle start. So it does let MikeYeung get a little bit ahead. He's further along in his jungle clear, so when he donates that blue buff over, it's not as much of a detriment to him because he should still theoretically be ahead of Dandy. All that considered, yeah, it is really nice to see MikeYeung working with his team to find exactly the best way to utilize their champions and not just the best way to get myself ahead.
It's also interesting the fact that so much of P1's promotion tournament basically run has been focused around Ryu, who not that long ago was saying that he was getting a little burnt out, he wanted to take a break, but now Phoenix One, with him in the lineup, are looking pretty darn good. I mean, they definitely had their struggles throughout the NALCS, so I don't want to say this is the best Phoenix One has looked, especially the fact that there was Rift Rivals P1 that went 4-2 against the European teams, but they definitely kind of found a formula that is working for them. But E United were finding the way to try to shut that down in game number 1. Just as you mentioned, E United made a couple of mistakes that allowed P1 to come back into the game because their game plan isn't just Ryu, but they know how to play around the map with Ryu so well.
More often than not, it is Ryu the one who's making these plays, as Licorice wants to get aggressive there. A nicely timed taunt by Zig stops the Gnar ultimate from coming in, but there's still a lot of pressure up here.
Ooh, yeah, Dandy's over here as well. So the Gnar against the wall, the body slam up. Zig puts on the Spirit's Refuge. So he will be able to dodge out on some of those auto attacks. It looks like he might just be enough to keep him alive. Licorice is very low, but sipping on a health potion. And Zig's going to taunt forward, get the damage down to Dandy under the tower. He flashes out and barely stays alive. First blood goes over to Licorice, but now Ryu is on the hunt for blood. Dandy might be trying for the execute, but Zig's tagged him with the damage, so Zig gets the kill credit.
Nice idea out of Zig there. Gets the jump onto Dandy before his body slam comes back up, makes him take turret aggro, almost gets the kill, especially when you factor in that Ryu was roaming, but just not quite enough damage out of him to finish off Dandy to the turret right away. Licorice gets the kill, able to hop out, and They still get one kill because Ryu cut off the escape path. We'll take another look at this. The CC wasn't exactly layered perfectly. Both the body slam and the wall up hit at the same time after Licorice gets the stun against the wall here, but very close to being able to kill him. Just not quite enough damage as Licorice was taking the turret, goes Mini-Gnar form. Unfortunately, don't get the kill right away, but this taunt was nicely timed. Just a nice fadeaway barrel there by Dandy to help give the final damage to Licorice. As we see, hold on, red buff invade.
Yeah, Licorice and Dandy are now on the bottom side of the map. We did see Zig teleporting back top side, but United have rotated their lanes around here. MikeYeung and Expresso trying to contest this red buff, thinking that they have the man advantage on the bottom side of the map, but it will be spited away. Looks like that Dandy will be able to secure that for himself, but now Zeyzal getting taunted up under the tower here is definitely... And Zeyzal will be testing this 2v1 situation. He wanted to basically get definitely out of that disadvantageous lane matchup that he wound up having. They were struggling and shoved under their own tower, so they rotate up immediately after they get the kill, but more importantly, they burn Shen's teleport in the process.
A little surprised to see that early map movement out of EU United there, just because definitely was doing fine in terms of CS. They were definitely down pressure, and who might be struggling, especially as Arrow came back in the lane with a BF sword, but it does pull them out of what is their potential game plan of trying to find these dives on people pinned up against their turret with a roaming GBM. And after their lane swap, it's actually Phoenix One who's going to be able to grab the first turret of the game. There's still a Mountain Dragon available down the bot side. Kalista not particularly good at pushing turrets in a 2v1 situation.
Yeah, so now we have Kalista on the top side trying to match the push that P1 did on the bottom side, but the dual lane is rotating up, and Zig is still underneath this tower, wave clearing to his heart's content. MikeYeung on the wreck side, coming up, providing a little bit of cover. Ryu is rotated over here as well, so Phoenix One, they get the first tower gold for the game. They also wind up keeping their tower alive on the top side of the map.
Phoenix One being able to capitalize on United's rotation up there to the top side. Like you said, they did get the Shen teleport out because the bot lane was already moving up there, which does net them a small global advantage, but Shen still has his ultimate available to join in should the bot lanes match up again, which looks like that's what's going to happen. Definitely, and Zeyzal returning up to that top side right now to meet up against Arrow.
Meanwhile, GBM being passed off his blue buff from Dandy in the jungle. MikeYeung and Ryu, though, knew this was going on, wanted to try to get a little bit of vision over the wall, but will be zoned out by GBM on this Galio pickup, who very impressively staying relatively even in CS with Ryu's Taliyah. Taliyah has been moving around the map a couple of times. We saw Weaver's wall at the top side. We saw him collapsing on that side as well to keep the tower alive while GBM was left towards the mid lane of the map. But now, bit of a lane swap shenanigan situation with the duos on the top and the solos on the bottom. Though the Gnar is not going to have a tower to fall back to, so we potentially see that being a point of attack for Phoenix One. But they might also be content to try to get Arrow even further ahead now. He does have the solo gold from the tower on his side, a little bit of CS in his favor, just a handful, but it winds up resulting in about 500 gold advantage for this Tristana over the Kalista.
Small advantages for P1 in the bot in mid lane. United have their advantage up on the top side with that dive as well as the rotation, able to get a 20 CS lead onto the Gnar, trying to get that split push going. It is something that can, like we said, get a little uncomfortable for Shen in the long lanes once the Frozen Mallet comes in if the game is going relatively slow. Last game, very active game, both top laners being pulled to their teams. But this time around, much slower paced game despite the early game power that is available for United here. Maybe learning too much of a lesson from the last game about playing slower. Not necessarily what you want to be doing with this team comp.
Potentially, and you would say that if P1 are playing to a very similar way that they did in game number 1, that the less aggression from EU United will wind up being favorsome to them as they have the later game scaling Tristana, and as you mentioned, the fact that there's not a lot of late game scaling power on the side of EU United, and their composition kind of just wants to brawl. But we may be looking for the fact that we have some item power spikes that need to come in beforehand. Right now, the Kalista, if you get the Blade of the Rune King, that's when she's going to be extremely strong. She does spike at level 6 when she has the ability to Fates Call the Alistar in to start these team fights up. She doesn't have the damage to kind of seal the deal, though. Starting a fight that you can't actually win is not the best idea.
Not at all. It is one of those times, too, where you can talk about how beefy the front line of United is and how long it'll take Phoenix One's comp to chew through it. But this time around, they don't quite have that Maokai, who is one of the most unbelievable tanks in the late game. I guess you would say GBM is probably the strongest tank in the late game here, potentially the Gnar. But Taliyah has really high DPM when she's just throwing out that threaded volley repeatedly against tanks, can melt them down pretty quickly, as well as we've already seen multiple times over the course of this tournament just how powerful that Tristana pick is.
GBM also has his own take on what he likes to build on champion. P1 on the top side of the map lets Mike Young go to the bottom side over here and just solo out this Mountain Dragon. So there's going to be an Elemental Drake in their favor, which will help them take down some of these towers. More importantly, give Mike Young a chance to wrap around to Licorice. Mentioned before, this long lane here is not going to be good for the Gnar. Gnar's Mike Young back against the wall, but the Weaver's Wall came in there from Ryu, and Licorice gets a nice wall up, but the Void Rush is going to come through as Mike Young secures the kill for P1.
Nice dodge out by Mike Young there, avoids the ultimate while getting that. United want to answer on the flip side of the map. They are working down this Rift Herald slowly. Once again, GBM not actually able to get involved in that play. Might have been able to get in range for the ultimate, but it's still a 3v2 situation. They choose not to go for it. Kalista has a lot of stacks in here. They do get it, but Phoenix One is collapsing.
Ooh, and they immediately try to go onto Arrow. Instead, he flashes by, has the Shensen. Now he wanted to jump it back in. They blocked out on a Dandy and picked up a kill. GBM comes in with the hero's entrance. He gets a massive taunt on, but definitely is over the wall. Rends through the stacks, and GBM's able to pick up a kill for himself. Now Zeyzal flashing forward. Not only does he get the knockup, but he gets the Eye of the Herald and gets thrown back in by the Fates call. P1 are scattering to the winds now as Licorice has respawned and teleported in this fight. Flashes over and into the threaded volley. Ryu trying to duel against him, but an ace comes out with one last boulder toss.
Phoenix One think they're picking this fight and getting the jump on it with how quickly they get Dandy down low. But one tank is replaced by 3 more as E United also collapse on that fight. They're able to find the multiple members. Definitely does a good job staying relatively unfocused over the course of that fight. They clean it up. They also, like you said, make sure they pick up that Eye of the Herald. Now they're going to finish off this mid turret and maybe get Zig as well.
And Zig teleports in, and Xpecial joins the fray as well. They're trying to lock down the GBM. He will actually go down as Xpecial gets the kill credit for that, but E United have gotten themselves the tower.
Not too bad overall. We'll take another look at that one as after making that bot lane play, you see Mike Young and Ryu working their way up to collapse on this. Dandy wants to pull the trigger, gets an ultimate knockback onto Arrow, flash away, Shen ult coming in. GBM, once again, a little slow channeling this ultimate, as definitely was already flashing out, but GBM's able to stay in this fight. They're working down Zeyzal and GBM, who are extremely healthy. Licorice finally finishes channeling his TP, definitely gets back involved in a huge knock up there by Zeyzal. Eventually drops as well, having gone in after his ultimate wore off, but it bought enough time for the rest of his team to get that ace.
We see massive damage coming out from GBM in that fight. Galio, we mentioned, might not be the latest scaling damage threat, but in the early game, those Winds of War and those Justice Punch really combined for a heck of a lot of damage, but no slouch from the side of Ryu either. As you mentioned, the Taliyah damage in the later game, the constant TPS that she's able to provide. We're already showcasing that pretty early on. She did the most damage in that fight for Phoenix One.
Phoenix One want to keep the pressure up, though. They rotate up to the top side. That turret's down. Now they're working on their second one, trying to put this Mountain Dragon to use. Not much wave clear up here, and it's a 5-man push from Phoenix One.
And it's one of the downsides to United's composition. GBM is in the mid lane. He's basically their main source of wave clear, so 2 towers for the price of none. The Phoenix One are the ones that walk away with. You figured that they wanted to get into the Rift Herald the way they pushed down those 2 towers back to back.
We heard Jat talking about on the analyst desk the post-fight decision-making not being great on the side of E United. They did finish off that turret down in the mid lane, but as they did it, they kind of took a fight versus Zig there. They lose GBM. They have to reset late, and during that downtime and during that replay, Phoenix One is actually able to push up that top side and getting the second inner turret on there. Down the bot side, though, with all that focus, 5-man push from the top side, Licorice does work down his own turret.
And so Licorice, the split push from Gnar, pretty much online at this point, has the Black Cleaver, has the Jarm's Fist as well, so we'll see if he winds up going for the Frozen Mallet build, like we saw Zig doing in game number 1, the opposite side of this matchup. Phoenix One, though, grouping up again. They're trying to catch out on the GBM here. He is kind of the bigger game early threat here from E United. They're able to lock him down and get Arrow a kill. GBM out of the equation, but no real map objectives left. There's no Mountain Drake or Ocean Drake available quite yet. That's still about 1:50 away. And a lot of the outer towers are already down on the map, save for the one in the mid lane here from E United.
If you're Phoenix One, though, you're pretty happy with a quick influx of 300 gold there. Able to get that kill onto Arrow, I believe. So he's going to cash in a little bit faster on his Infinity Edge. And Phoenix One will be relatively content with this game going a little bit later. They already have the 1 Mountain Dragon Ocean spawning in 1.5 minutes. not the most important late game dragon, so you could see them sack that one to potentially focus more down on mid lane or just keeping their farm up.
At this point in time, also have to mention that while they're getting the pick on the Galleon, that's pretty good. GBM himself has had some very interesting builds. We saw his Abyssal Mask rush Cassiopeia in the last game. Also going for the Proto Belt on the Galio pickup, which is a little bit of a GBM special. We saw him be able to showcase what that build actually did in the semifinals against Big God Jackal. He was able to Proto Belt himself into some interesting Justice Punch kill and shenanigans, but providing a little bit of extra damage take onto this Galio pick rather than the full thing.
There you see the Rift Herald. Going to be timing out soon, so Zeyzal just drops in the mid lane, doesn't even get too much damage down with that charge. And talking about that build, it is something that's seen a little bit more popularity after they got rid of the power spiking triple Doran's Ring build. People have been trying to find the next thing. You do see a lot of Abyssal Masks first, depending on what you're playing against. The physical damage, Mike Young being the jungle threat, maybe dissuades that a little bit. It would be nice to combo with Dandy's damage, but didn't feel like that was the best first option. And then you do see the Proto Belt relatively often does add a nice little burst of damage if you're trying to solo out a squishy backline member.
As you mentioned, because of the composition from E United, GBM will have to be a little bit more of a damage threat than potentially see out of some of these Galio pickups. Is that P1 the inside track for the Ocean Drake that wasn't available when they originally picked off GBM, but it has now taken the extra 2 or so minutes to respawn. Looks like the E United are trying to chase down on this one though. They're actually going to see GBM coming at the hero's entrance, and Mike Young was able to secure the dragon, but I don't know if they're going to be able to get this fight out. E United goes in. Zeyzal wants to try to get a good knock up. The Unbreakable Will is there. The teleport is coming as well, but a really good Glacial Fissure into the Weaver's Wall knocks away everybody from E United. Talia is actually able to get a kill onto the Alistar, but the flash tunnel over the wall locks him down. Now they're going down to Mike Young as the Gnar against the wall will lock him up. Zig trying to play big beefy frontline and will just be enough to turn E United away.
Not too bad for Phoenix One. They're able to secure the dragon and trade 1-for-1. Unfortunate that Ryu is the one that gets traded out for the enemy team support. But it could have gone a lot worse, all things considered. The power of E United's team fight at this point in the game is huge, and they're able to get that and get out quickly enough. E United were taking this a little bit slow. I don't think they were expecting Phoenix One to just melt this down. Dandy finally wraps around from the side and tries to kick this fight off. Zeyzal gets a nice engage, but there's no ward for Zig to really start teleporting into. They finally drop a pink ward in the middle of the fight so he can get involved. And then it's just a little bit too slow as multiple engages have already been used. It's already been mostly disengaged from. Ryu just not quite in a position to find his way out of that fight. Does get the trade kill. And then Mike Young able to get out of there despite the Gnar coming in. So that's a situation where if E United were a little bit more aggressive, brute forcing into that river, they played it really, really slow. When you have so many tanks, you can kind of just run in there because if they're going for the dragon, they're not going to be protecting their vision wards that easily. And if they are protecting their vision wards, great, go fight them. It was just too slow. Dandy eventually got around for the flank on the backside to try and knock somebody in with his ultimate, but with no Gnar coming in, they weren't quite all grouped up, and it's much easier for Shen to get involved in the fight like that when there are no wards down, because he can just pop his ultimate on any target.
And even though it wasn't necessarily the cleanest fight for E United, they lost out on the objective, they still end up picking up a nice kill onto Ryu here. And because of the way they were fighting in the jungle, unfortunately, Zeyzal was a casualty of that. So P1 do come out ahead, but E United showcasing what their team composition can do. And now we're at about the 20-minute mark. We have his Blade of the Rune King and the Runon's Hurricane picked up for Kalista. We have basically just the Proto Belt. Now the Abyssal Mask comes in for GBM on his Galio. We have the 2-item power spike from the Gnar as well. So this is where you think E United wants to fight. Yeah,
this is definitely one of the best points for E United. You see Licorice pushing in that Shen, chunking him out. Ryu roaming over to try and limit that. That's something that Phoenix One do fairly well, is when they don't have pressure in the side lane, moving Ryu over to try and compensate for that. They overall play the map decently well when you get into these more complicated split push situations. So you can see them roam over, try and chunk out Licorice. They know his teleport is not available, so they don't need to worry about force on the flip side of the map, as well as the fact that United's team comp does Baron super slowly. It is scary if Kalista has a million Ren stacks in it, but it's going to take forever for that to happen. So nice play there, just relieving pressure. Those small roams that Ryu does might not feel like the most impactful thing in terms of gold lead or anything like that, but Licorice was starting to chunk Zig out, and it buys space for him to go get a reset off, heal back up, and then get back in that bot lane.
I just saw E United so far in the promotion tournament. little strange to see them in a gold advantage at 20 minutes. If you remember game number 1, they were about 343 gold ahead. This game, they're even less than that, but they still have themselves a lead. So they have themselves relatively even with Phoenix 1 as far as gold counts go. But when you have the compositions, you compare the two kind of champion selections from last game, you want to have that more gold advantage at this point in time with the composition United has right now, or you want to try forcing that by fighting while P1 are kind of dancing back and forth between the mid lane and the Baron.
Dancing back and forth is all United's doing right now. They do want to find an opportunity to get an engage off here, but Phoenix 1 contesting the vision, making it difficult to look for any kind of flank wards because they do have the double teleport with the Galio. He can be the one to start the fight off if he gets behind you with his teleport. Justice Punch with Taunt is a fair amount of CC, and then he can use his ultimate to get out of a fight if he's getting focused down, or just use it to get even more damage off if another tank has gotten involved in that fight.
It looked like they were trying to buy a little bit of time for the split push coming out from Licorice's Gnar. He has gone back, picked up pieces for what is most likely a Gargoyle Stone Plate. Knight's Vow has been completed by Dandy, so he can pledge his loyalty to Deathly on this Kalista pickup. But on the opposite side, Mike Young has picked up his own Knight's Vow, so both junglers pledging loyalty to their respective ADCs. We see now Arrow has hit a decent power spike on the Tristana as well. Zerker's Grease as well as the Static Shiv. Going to be wave clearing out quite effectively. Actually rushed the Static Shiv this game. Picked up the Infinity Edge now as the second itemization on the Tristana.
Something I'm sure Freak will be happy about. I know he's not a huge fan of the IE first, generally speaking. Wants you to get some attack speed.
Ooh, definitely. Ooh, has to flash away as well, so that's going to be a Summoner Spell burn, and Ryu just throwing out a couple of rocks.
And there Ryu goes again, kind of making his own plays. Gets the flash out of Deathly. While Phoenix 1 are not exactly the team comp, most likely flash on to Deathly and punish that being down. At the very least, it makes him a little bit more difficult to get involved in the fight. Here's another roam out of Ryu.
Ryu again, hops off the Weaver's Wall a little bit early though. Licorice deciding to back away from this engagement, but now that United see there's only 3 members in Phoenix 1 in the mid lane, they're going to be pushing up a little more aggressively. More importantly, making their way over towards the Baron pit, trying to clear out some of this vision control that P1's been putting down.
And once again, these small little plays that Ryu makes are not negligible. They do add up, because when you're struggling to hold on for the late game and wait for your Tristana to hit her power spikes, nothing is better than these kinds of plays. You're not forcing action, really. You're not taking all-ins. You're limiting the split push. You're getting flashed out. Now you get to make plays like this.
Ooh, there was a flash in there onto Deathly from Mike Young, and actually locked him up and taking him down. There's the Hero's Entrance coming in from GBM and a teleport coming in from Licorice, but he's not even Mega right now. They're trying to lock on the GBM. The explosive cast from Dandy tries to separate the rest of his team from his carries, but P1 had picked up the first kill of this fight. Looks like they might just be content to back away and continue to reset and push down on this tower.
Phoenix 1 proving me wrong right away. I'm saying I don't think that they're going to go flashing aggressively onto Deathly, and that's exactly what they do. They find the pick off, and with that, going to try and pressure down this mid lane turret, grabbing their 4th of the game.
That's why you don't tell Mike, don't tell me what to do, Young, what to do, Mark.
I'll stop.
Okay, that's fine. P1 get themselves a tower, the 4th one of the game for themselves. Now they swung the gold advantage ever so slightly in their favor, and they're still waiting to capitalize on more plays from this Arrow leading the charge by leaping in, but United just walk away.
A little bit difficult. They don't have the best long-range engage tools, especially once the flash is off of Mike Young. They can go for a flash taunt or something like that, maybe a special flash ultimate, but still not quite as easy to go for. And that's just one of those plays where you're hoping the enemy walks a little bit too far forward, you find an angle, doesn't quite work out. Now they're going to reset. They do have to be a little bit careful when you go for a play like that, because it delays your resets, the enemy team gets ready, and they can do this. They can start the Baron out, but with United's team comp, it's really not that scary.
Yeah, United smacked the Baron a couple of times. It prompts a control ward over the wall from Ryu, and Licorice just walks away and says, haha, gotcha. But it was actually P1 who are the ones that got Deathly here. As you see Mike Young with, like you said, the aggressive flash unburrow onto a flashless Deathly.
And they're able to get the follow-up CC out of Ryu there, gets the knockback, gets the huge damage in, able to finish him off, and then all these tanks are teleporting in, trying to provide a front line, but for what? There's no backline damage dealer at all for United. Licorice can do a lot of damage in a fight if he's left untouched during it, but by the time he gets involved in that one, it's a little bit too late to try and win a 4v5.
We said in the series against Gold Point United yesterday, it was pretty much the Deathly show on Tristana. This time around, legitimately being one of the only big damage threats in their composition. Him being taken down means that United are left a little bit, you know, powerless in some of these fights. P1 still has the potential of having both Ryu and Arrow just have some damage. Like you said, Licorice can eventually stack up some damage with his hyper stacks and being able to transform to Mega Gnar and getting the burst damage in from his abilities in that form. But you got to prolong one of those team fights. P1 at this point in time, not looking to prolong anything, actually looking up to Baron. 26 minutes in, they've been able to sweep out the vision. They went over the wall with basically everybody from their team here. Everybody could hop over that, so E United has not seen this at all. They're only going to know now that Xpecial is walking over the Scuttle Crab, but it's already dead, Mark.
Really nice Baron sneak out of Phoenix 1 there. They have that Mountain Dragon to help them out, as well as the Tristana doing huge damage to it. Shen and Rek'Sai not slouches either, to be honest, with Shen's percent health damage. So they're able to take that one down relatively quickly. And now Phoenix 1 are in a lot of, or excuse me, United, a lot of trouble. Phoenix 1 will start pushing down. The split push, Gnar will not be able to really get anything going, and they're going to be forced to kind of try and defend one of these turrets that they still have left up. If you continue to let Phoenix 1 just siege down with the Baron buff, the gold lead goes bigger and bigger, and it just goes harder and harder to win a team fight. So there's not really a great option left here for United.
P1 are going to be basically free to take the rest of the objectives on the map right now. They're going to grab this Elemental Cloud Drake. Like you said, United, they have to contest with Baron buff minions right now, and the big factor is their main source of wave clear is Galio, who's not going to be super effective against the Baron buff minions since they are more resistant to the magic damage coming in from the Winds of War. You have a Kalista who can hop around and stack things up with her Runon's Hurricane, but still doesn't have a lot of full AD, so the wave clear coming in here for United may be a little bit of a disadvantage for them. This is why their competition needed to get out to an early game lead and wanted to end the game as quickly as possible, so they were not faced with a situation like this where they are not apt to deal with it.
See them struggling right now. Ryu gonna throw a wall off, just scaring United, most likely not really looking for an engage. GBM though
can't get over though. He's gonna get shoved back to the seismic shove. The tower goes down, they collapse on the GBM, and Ryu picks up the kill.
Once again, proving me wrong there on Phoenix 1 side. They get the wall off. GBM's Justice Punch will not be able to get over the wall, but he does not have enough teammates around to actually protect him, so they get that kill. They get 2 turrets in the middle. They're going to be able to grab the inhibitor. Phoenix 1 rolling through this game.
To be completely honest, this kind of reminds me of kind of like last game, although on the opposite side, because it was, their first Baron buff went down, and it was, they don't want to lose an inhibitor tower, they want to lose an inhibitor. That would be like the most devastating thing ever. Now United are in that position where they don't want to lose an inhibitor tower, they don't want to lose an inhibitor. Their composition that needed to be ahead and wanted to brawl with these big beefy tanks that became unkillable because of their advantages is now having to deal with super minions and a lack of wave clear.
It's going to be a very tough situation for United to go for. At some point, they're just going to have to pull the trigger and brute force a fight. Try their best to win it. Phoenix 1's doing a good job of finding their opportunities. They found one onto Deftly after getting a splash out. There, GBM, still no flash available. Pin him underneath his turret, finish the turret off, and then get the kill onto him as well. You see, not really that tanky against physical damage at all on the side of GBM. Has his Ninja Tabbies, just got a Chain Vest, but Abyssal Mask, Hex Tech, Proto Belt, and a Lonnie Guy really not going to provide that much tankiness.
Not super tanky, not super damage dealing, still a decent threat, considering he's one of the only AP threats that is itemizing for damage. He basically hurts everybody on the team that is not named Shen or Rek'Sai, because they're the ones that are stacking different kinds of resistances. A Spirit Visage has been picked up on Shen, in addition to the fact that there's a Gargoyle Stoneplate on the Rek'Sai. So maybe GBN can land onto a primary target like Ryu, who lays down this Weaver's Wall to zone them away from their own tower. He could provide a bit of damage. Right now, he can't even get anywhere close to the team. Ryu showcasing, now that he's on one of his comfort picks, exactly what he can do. You mentioned all the little advantages that Ryu had adding up to get Arrow and the rest of P1 into this later stages of the game, but just the Weaver's Wall as in general have been very, very good this game.
Feels like United are struggling to get set up before Phoenix 1 are in that position. So yes, that Weaver's Wall is really nice, but you want to have wards down already so you can threaten a teleport flank when that happens. As they're walking up to get that damage on the turret, maybe you can get an opportunity to get a dive off. You are 5,000 gold behind, so it's very unlikely that you just win a brute force play like that, but it's something that you need to look for, because otherwise Phoenix 1 is just going to keep doing this. They're going to keep mowing down your objectives.
And with a 5,369 gold Baron power play, P1 are going to continue to knock at the door of E United. Like you mentioned, that's translated basically into a swing of 6,000 gold into the advantage of Phoenix 1. They haven't necessarily gone back and spent all of it, but Zig has recalled into the bottom side of the map and is pushing on that side. The exposed inhibitor up here will continue to be pressured down on, but now that E United have all grouped up and rooted themselves into defend against this one, P1 decided it's time to go on a shopping spree.
cash in on a lot of that gold that they have. Baron's not going to be up for quite a while. Ocean Dragon coming up pretty soon, so they have some choices. They continue to play it slow, or they can go potentially just group up down that bot side, try and work on that inner turret that's still available. The world is Phoenix One's oyster right now.
That sounds really good right now. I'm getting kind of hungry. Phoenix One are hungry for Game 2 victory. Because Phoenix One, they have a little bit of a stigma to overcome in this promotion tournament as well. They are extremely far ahead in this series. They've done so in all of the series in the promotion tournament so far. The first time around, it went to a full 5 games, and they were able to pull out the victory over GCU. Yesterday, it went to a full 5 games, and they lost.
This better not be a case of commentator's curse, Tom.
Listen, I'm saying
Are you condemning them to another 5-game series?
I'm saying that if I think it's going to go 5 games still, and they have a lot to prove, that the opposite should happen, right? The reverse caster curse.
We will see. I mean, Phoenix One is looking a lot better today overall, I'd say. They are still making like a couple mistakes that you saw in game 1, but they did a good job clawing back after a deficit that was mostly created off of United's good plays. And then there was really a single big misplay trying to end the game. But other than that, it was relatively clean. They still took the next 2 fights relatively convincingly. So we'll have to see if United find a way back in this game, or if Phoenix One's going to continue to play cleanly.
And you kind of have to wonder if P1 has the better later game scaling team composition with the Tristana, with the Taliyah having a lot of extra damage. Where is the window of opportunity for E United in this composition? We keep saying that Licorice and his split push potential can be massive against the Shen, but the Shen now 2-2-5, having a Titanic Hydra to match the split push. A lot of resistance is built up against the Gnar, now even has a Bramble Vest in addition to that, so the Gnar tries to auto-attack trade against the Shen's going to be providing extra supplemental damage in addition to just the damage that he can provide from auto-attack. Where does E United try to get themselves back in this game?
Yeah, the split push plan, for all intents and purposes, is pretty much dead. Because in order for that to work, you still need a relatively strong 4-man core to hold on. And your 4-man core will not be able to stop Phoenix One from going from this Baron in 20 seconds. So you're going to have to find a fight, and you have to find one of the backline members. Ideally, Arrow on the Tristana pick, but Ryu's no joke either. So you're going to need a fight where you're able to take both of them down. They do have the tools to do it. They have a ton of engage available. You can insect somebody back with that Gragas ultimate. Maybe you just find a great Fates call. Gnar with a good teleport flank can hit a big Gnar ultimate, a Mega Gnar ultimate, and then you can potentially win that fight. But it's very tough as Phoenix One's doing a good job trying to control vision. There's no wards behind them currently, and they can kind of play this as slow as they want to. Let those minions go in. They can not even force the Baron right now if they want to. They can try and instead focus on the inhibitors. That is a little bit risky because as you walk forward in the map, it's more likely to give up a flank. So we'll have to see what they choose.
And we did see that Licorice had chosen to group up the rest of his team because there are no wards to teleport to. Now Zeyzal actually going in. Headbutt Pulverize combo, trying to get a little bit of damage down onto Mike Young, maybe trying to find a stray arrow, but it will be dissuaded here by Phoenix One. It's giving E United a little bit of time and an opportunity to go back to this Baron Pit area and potentially put down some of those deeper teleport potential wards that they do desperately need if they want to come out ahead in this next team fight.
You have some good vision control right now, so Phoenix One's going to vacate that top side of the map momentarily to focus down on the Ocean Dragon, their 4th elemental of the game, trying to make the Captain Planet, just not quite possible with the current rules of League of Legends.
Nope, can only get 3 out of them. They got one of each that they could potentially get in this game.
Yep, and they get their 2nd Ocean Dragon. It's going to help in these kind of siege-ish situations when you're propped up around the Baron Pit. You saw Mike Young take a little bit of chunk there. Ocean Dragon's going to be very useful in terms of getting back up in a situation like that.
See on the bottom side, Licorice maybe going back to a split push play, but Ryu is here to help deal the damage with Zig. Mike Young actually coming to the wall as well. They flash and burrow onto Licorice. The hero's entrance knocks up on the Mike Young, done to the tower, but it's going to be Ryu taking up the tower damage. The rest of P1 has rotated down to the bottom side of the map to meet up with these minions. They might be going not for the Baron play, but for the base play as they take another outer tower on the map, the 8th tower and the last outer tower of the game.
Not a bad look out of Phoenix One, all things considered. Not really the play that's going to blow open the game. Maybe you can kill Licorice, but he is very tanky, and there is a Galio to assist him. So they just get another small advantage, work down that outer turret, their inner turret, last one of the game. They still have that bot inhibitor turret available. The problem with this is that with so many resources spent down to the bot side, you see that over time, E United has actually snuck in quite a few good wards into this river pit, some behind the Baron wall as well. So Phoenix One still need kind of that game-breaking play, most likely, either grabbing the Baron or winning some team fight.
Well, there are still 2 exposed inhibitors on the side of E United as well, so P1 also has the option of running it down top or running it down mid and just going for that exposed inhibitor and making E United react to that. But E United are still propped and ready, trying to force something around this Baron area. They want to be prepared for potential teams, like you said, having the deeper vision wards in order to teleport in with Licorice and get a very good Gnar ultimate in. But Zeyzal now trying to contest the vision, might be caught out here just ever so slightly. The rest of E United were just around the blue buff area, but the seismic shove in on the Licorice gets him out. He has to transform, but a flash in from Dandy, explosive cast, just knocks the rest of P1 back. Doesn't really get anybody knocked in as the flash from Ryu was burned.
Yeah, Ryu was walking a little bit too close to that wall to get some extra chip damage onto Licorice in that situation. The other tanks of E United flank around from the side, almost get the knock-in on Ryu. A nice flash to make sure that doesn't happen. But you see Phoenix One struggling a little bit to secure this objective. There aren't too many wards available in the pit right now. You see that they're going to go for a wall off onto the jungle entrances out of Ryu while they just melt this down. It's very difficult for United to find a way in. Dandy with no flash.
Ooh, but Arrow decides to find Dandy and turn on him. The Hero's Entrance comes in, but Dandy's already down. GBM gets a flash taunt across the whole team, and Zeyzal gets a pulverize to follow up. Deftly's in the backline, ripping through as Kalista. GBM proto belts himself out, and Deftly is still untouched. GBM stays alive, and there's another huge knockup from Zeyzal. Deftly now going to be taunted up, and Gnar goes in and stuns him against the wall, but Ziggs killed Deftly. GBM goes down in the back as Arrow leaps in for a double kill. Licorice goes down as another double kill comes across for P1, and that's the ace.
E United's able to find a couple moments of CC onto the back line of Phoenix One, but they're never comboed together with any real damage. That big taunt, Arrow's able to cleanse his way out of there with his QSS, just walk out, keep dealing with damage over the course of that team fight, and E United fall brick by brick as their tanks drop down.
And as you saw right there, E United just did not have the damage to turn that team fight around. Dandy's respawned and thrown the explosive cask out, but P1 doesn't even care. They're going to march into the base. They're going to take the Nexus, and they're going to be one win away from emerging victorious out of the promotion tournament.
Big bounce back game out of Phoenix One there. No mistakes really this time around. United never had a substantial lead. They did that initial lane swap, didn't quite turn out, and after that, Phoenix One basically never had to worry about giving up control of this game. There was a close teamfight or two, but like we said, mostly able to trade 1-for-1 over the course of it and just kite it out. Never lost any super priority targets. And overall, a nice game plan adaptation out of them compared to game one, where for the most part, they were focusing a lot more on some early game. United did a great job forcing them off their comfort champions. This time around, Ryu takes his champion in the first round, the draft, so they can't do more bans thrown his way. They grabbed that Taliyah, and you saw E United, despite having a good game plan seemingly in game one, go completely different direction, take a million tanks, and try and go for this really early game focus team comp.
But they were lacking the early game team cohesion that they had in game number one. Like we said, they were invading through vision. Dandy and GBM were grouping up and hard camping down on Ryu in the mid lane. They didn't have the same kind of even gank pressure that they did in game one in this composition that needed the lead.
Right, it was very curious to see. GBM had a really rough time getting out of lane versus the Taliyah, was pretty much stuck under his turret, didn't match any of the early roams. They didn't force any plays. They go for a lane swap instead of diving at 6 or something like that. Just a tough game out of E United there.
Now let's check in with the analysts as to see what they make of that Phoenix One victory.
All right, thank you very much, Tom and Mark. And guys, get your brooms ready, because it's either going to be a sweep one way, or maybe a sweep for the other way, or it's 3-1, and that's not a sweep to anything.
No,
Yeah, we've seen full sweeps.
Reverse sweep.
We've seen full sweeps. We've seen reverse sweeps. We've seen failed sweeps.
And for Phoenix One, we don't know what it's going to be. What we do know is that they're undefeated in games 1 and 2 across the last 3 days.
And winless in games 3 and 4.
Yes.
So we're going to game 5. Right.
Yeah, but this game was a little bit odd. I think, as Mark mentioned in Champion Select, we were talking about how E United should pick late game and just less is more, and then they picked this tank, snowballing Kalista team composition, and were unable to do so, and allowed Phoenix One to then play the scaling game and just scale.
Yeah, what's funny though is there are elements that did work. Like back in the Challenger Finals when they were up against GCU, their one game win was using this Galio. And I actually think that the high AP Magic Pen Proto Belt like AP Galio for GBM actually is pretty good, and he was reasonably effective here. But much like the first game, mid-game comes around and they stop making good calls in P1. They get Baron sneaks, they start winning team fights, and even though you had good starts by EU United. It fell apart just like the previous game.
And we're a little worried about Arrow's performances on something else other than Varus, but he showed some proficiency here on the Tristana by scaling and getting to the late game.
Yeah, for sure. And when you see the Trist get to late game against a Kalista, remember it's a big difference. I feel like if they're late game against a Caitlyn or a Twitch or a Kog'Maw, then you're not going to see the same type of discrepancy. But in these games where one team has a good scaling AD carry and the other team does not, that's when we're seeing the big differences.
Well, let's take a look at how things unfolded. It wasn't all roses here for Phoenix One, as it started off with the E United ace around the Rift Herald.
And this is what the early game-ish sort of team's supposed to look like. And if you're good at closing out games, this is the kind of thing that wins you the game. Galio comes in, gets a big knockup, definitely gets over the wall pretty cleanly. He's out of range for a little while, but it's okay.
Yeah, and GBM ends up playing this fight really well. He has a proto belt, I believe, at this point, so an AP build. He just sneaks around the back and cuts off their retreat. So you see Arrow trying to hop around right into a Justice Punch. It was a very strong cleanup from United, and that's what happens when you have these CC-heavy, bruiser-heavy tank teams with Kalista who can chase you down towards the end of team fights. Right. But then it's what they do after that. They tried to push mid, they had a casualty, they ended up losing their own mid lane turret in return, and they didn't actually gain that much, even though they should have with the, what was that, a 5-for-1?
Yeah, 5-for-1, 5-for-2, something like that.
5-for-2 on that one. And
yeah, that should be map control.
That's the big point there. There was a bunch of small skirmishes where Phoenix One was getting a kill, maybe 2 kills in return, and United wasn't pushing that lead and ended up stalling out the game, and leading to this very sneaky play here that kept Phoenix One on the front foot, the Baron sneak, and let's see how they got in there.
Yeah, you can see the setup right now. There's not that many wards for United, but they did weave around them well. I like the control ward in the back of the pit rather than the front of the pit when you don't have Scuttle Crab control, because you get this false sense of security when you do have Scuttle Crab control, when they're slowly moving through, and by the time they realize that Baron could actually be getting taken, it's already gone.
Yeah, and you can see, like, especially, Dance the Way, he never walks into the pit. He's going to say, yep, I'm still playing for ward vision, guys. Don't worry. He's acting as though his team is waiting in his jungle or something.
And you look at these faces here as we have a live look on Phoenix One. They look a lot more relaxed, a lot more reserved, but it goes back to what we heard from Mike Young, what we heard from Ryu, not getting too loose after going 2-0 and throwing that one away.
Right, and I think here they all know, like, everyone knows, like, guys, this is the 3rd time we've done this. Let's not keep doing this wrong, all right? Let's make sure we have a plan for game 3. Like, okay, we're clearly doing better than them, or in shape, like, we should be winning this, and I think they will remain focused, but realize that they've been trapping themselves before and they should come out with a solid plan in game 3 and not get ahead of themselves.
So on the opposite side for E United, we haven't seen them win a game yet after they've lost, right? It was 0-3, then 3-0. What do they need to do to bounce back? Is it just go back to the scaling? Is it just first picking Tristana here?
I wonder if there's an element of tilt that they're going to need to be able to recover from as well. A lot of the teams that don't have as much experience do not bounce very well back from these like long deficits. So I do think that the early game strategy doesn't work as well. With that being said, all of these guys are in an arms race with each other, and if one team picks nothing but late game scaling, these teams are still good enough that they're going to be able to run you over.
Right.
So I do want them to try their best to get a better late game scaling team composition, because I think that's the road for them. They're not, from the looks of it, going to beat P1 in the early game.
And does that need to be just Deathly, or what do we need out of GBM? Because I feel like the games where they've had success throughout this whole promotion tournament has when he's been on something meta or something that has been powerful, but when he went back to the Xerath, that didn't work out. Obviously, pulled out Galio here. That's reserved for TSM. What does he need to do to go ahead and carry his team over the line?
I mean, I thought his Caspi looked good in the first game, right? He had the very clutch team fight where he's like tanking against a bunch of frontliners, gets a couple off, and eventually it's the 3v2 at the end of it. Like, there were elements here that were good for him, and so I think this can continue. I think the Caspi looked pretty solid, and to your point, yeah, I agree. You can't sacrifice your early game and just give away 7 turrets, but you're right. I want to see them make sure they pick for scaling. I don't love 4-tank Kalista. I think it's a weak composition. When you know you're not good at closing out games, when you're not TSM or C9 or one of these squads who are actually very good at killing Nexus fast. So yeah, I think as a coach, say priority Tristana, priority Kog'Maw, priority things like this. Maybe the Twitch comes in there as well, and you make sure you can scale up, and you teach your players to be more reserved and say, come into this. They don't close games that well. P1 will throw, wait for it, scale up.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, this could be the last game, though. We're headed for a break, but Phoenix One is on match point. So stick around to see if they can close out the series or if E United strike back and extend this series. We'll see you back here very shortly.
We're gonna wing this. You gotta see this. Way. Yeah. Hey, I remember seeing your friend at Kermos.
Ziggs on the taunt forward, get the damage down to Dandy under the tower. He flashes out and barely stays alive.
Okay, I'm behind. Oh, Talia, Tristana, no flash. I got it.
Another huge knockup from Zeyzal. Definitely now are going to be taunted up. The Gnar goes in and stuns him against the wall, but Ziggs killed Definitely. GVM goes down in the back as Arrow leaps in for a double kill. Licorice goes down as another double kill comes across for P1, and that's the ace.